The human colony of Desolace had been a symbol of hope in the distant stars. Located on a planet with vast oceans and towering mountains, it had grown into a bustling world, full of promise. The colony's people had come to escape the destruction of Earth, seeking a new beginning in a far-off galaxy. But that hope was about to be shattered. Desolace was under attack. The Zhrak, a fierce alien species, had targeted the human colonies across the galaxy, hoping to crush the dreams of the humans who dared settle so far from their home planet. Their ships were massive, their weapons advanced beyond anything the humans could understand. Desolace had no chance of defending itself. The attack began without warning, enormous ships descending from the sky, raining fire down upon the peaceful cities. The Zhrak didn't care about the lives they destroyed. For them, it was just another conquest, another world to be taken. The humans didn't stand a chance. In the heart of the colony, the command center buzzed with frantic activity. Lieutenant Anna Rhodes, the leader of Desolace's defense forces, paced back and forth in front of a large holographic map. She could see the Zhrak ships descending rapidly, each one like a giant shadow moving toward the surface. "We need to evacuate," one of her officers shouted. "They're breaking through our defenses." But Anna didn't have the luxury of time. The colony's shields were barely holding, and they were already losing ground. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. There was no way they would be able to fight off the Zhrak. All she could do now was try to save as many people as possible. The humans had fought bravely, but against the overwhelming power of the Zhrak, there was no hope of winning. Desolace was doomed. Far beneath the surface, something ancient stirred. The humans on the surface were unaware, but deep below the planet, hidden away in an underground vault, the air grew colder. A soft rumbling shook the ground, sending vibrations through the planet. The vault had been sealed for centuries, hidden from the world above, but now something inside began to awaken. In the vault, the air shimmered with an eerie light as old, forgotten technology hummed to life. The first sign of movement came from the massive structures that lined the walls. They were like nothing the humans had ever seen. Giant stone pillars covered in intricate symbols that no one could understand. As the vault's systems powered up, ancient machinery shifted, and a low growl echoed through the air. It was so deep and powerful that it seemed to shake the very bones of the planet. The ground trembled again, this time stronger than before. The Zhrak ships overhead were unaware of the strange occurrence below. They continued their bombardment, relentless in their assault. The humans on the surface scrambled to escape, not knowing what lay beneath them. But in the depths of Desolace, something long forgotten was waking up, and it wasn't happy. High above, on the Zhrak mothership, Supreme Commander Orcs stood in front of the massive windows that offered a view of the planet below. Desolace was on fire. It had been a simple strike, another colony to conquer, another world to burn. The humans had been weak, unable to defend themselves, but something caught his attention. One of his officers, looking through their advanced scanning equipment, suddenly looked up, a confused expression on his face. "What is it?" Orcs demanded. "There's something strange happening on the planet's surface," the officer replied, voice shaky. "The ground is shaking. We're detecting some kind of energy surge." Orcs turned, his expression hardening. He hadn't expected anything like this. The Zhrak had never faced any threat from human colonies, let alone something like this. Could the humans have hidden some kind of weapon beneath the surface? "Send a team down," Orcs commanded, his voice sharp. "I want to know what's happening down there." But even as he gave the order, Orcs could feel a strange unease settle in his chest. Something about this felt different, as though the planet itself was alive, waking from a long slumber, and it didn't like what was happening. Back on the surface, Lieutenant Rhodes was still trying to maintain order amidst the chaos. She had gathered a small group of survivors, but there were so many people still trapped in the cities. The Zhrak were merciless, and every moment they waited meant more lives lost. But then, something changed. Above them, in the sky, a series of strange lights flickered. It wasn't the normal bombardment from the Zhrak. These lights were different. They were not from any ship, not from any weapon. They seemed to come from the very sky itself. As Anna looked up, her breath caught in her throat. The lights began to shift, forming shapes that seemed to glow with an otherworldly energy. The air felt heavier, charged with power. Then, a rumbling sound filled the air, like thunder, but louder, more intense. And then she saw it. A massive shadow passed over the colony, blocking out the light for just a moment. It was enormous, far bigger than any ship, far bigger than anything she had ever seen. Her heart raced as the shadow grew larger, closer. The sky split open, and, from the depths of Desolace, something ancient and powerful soared into the heavens. Anna's mind raced. Was this a weapon? Was it the Zrak? But no. The shape was unlike anything the Zrak had. The creature was alive. It was massive, its wings stretching across the sky like the very hands of fate itself. The entire colony seemed to stop in awe as the creature flew higher, letting out a deafening roar that shook the buildings below. The Zrak ships overhead faltered. Even Orcs, watching from the mothership, felt the immense power of the roar. What was this? What had they awoken? And that's when it hit him. Desolace wasn't just a colony. It was sitting on something far more dangerous than any weapon. The dragons had awoken. The roar that had echoed across the skies of Desolace still resonated in the hearts of the people below. Lieutenant Anna Rhodes stood frozen, her eyes wide as she watched the creature above. It was impossible to comprehend what she was seeing. It was a dragon, but not like any dragon from Earth stories. This creature was massive, its wings spanning the entire horizon, its scales shimmering with an ancient, almost magical glow. The very air around it seemed to hum with power. As it soared higher, other shapes began to appear, emerging from the clouds. More dragons, each larger and more terrifying than the last. Their wings beat with the power of storms, and their eyes glowed with an intense, burning fury. The sky seemed to darken as the dragons flew in formation, each one exuding a presence that made even the Zrak ships hesitate. On the Zrak mothership, Supreme Commander Orcs watched in disbelief. His mind struggled to make sense of what he was seeing. The humans had no such creatures in their arsenal, and no weapon the Zrak had ever encountered could explain the power these creatures wielded. "Commander," one of his officers said nervously, What are those?" Orcs gritted his teeth. "I don't know, but they are not human. Prepare to engage them." Back on Desolace, Anna's thoughts raced. She had never seen anything like this before. The Zrak had come to destroy the colony, but now, something else had arrived, something far beyond anything they had prepared for. The dragons were not a part of human history. They were not supposed to exist. "They've come to protect us," Anna whispered, barely believing the words herself. She could feel the ground shaking beneath her feet as the dragons began to dive toward the Zrak ships. Their powerful bodies cut through the atmosphere with an unearthly grace. As they descended, they opened their mouths, unleashing streams of fire that engulfed the Zrak warships. The flames weren't just heat, they were energy, pure and destructive. The Zrak ships buckled under the assault, their shields flickering, and failing as they were reduced to molten wreckage. The humans on the ground, who had once cowered under the fire of the Zrak, now watched in awe as the tables were turned. The dragons were tearing through the Zrak forces with ease, their fiery breath and powerful claws raking through enemy ships. It was as if the dragons were the embodiment of nature's fury itself, unstoppable and untamed. Anna watched the sky, her heart racing. There was no question now, these creatures were not here to be controlled. They were here to fight, and they would not stop until the Zrak were gone. Meanwhile, the Zrak commander Orcs had ordered his fleet to engage the dragons. His ships opened fire, sending waves of energy blasts toward the creatures. But the dragons simply swerved, their speed and agility impossible to match. They were too fast, too powerful. The Zrak fire barely grazed their scales, and even then the damage was minimal. The dragon's hide was tougher than anything the Zrak had ever encountered. "Adjust fire," Orcs shouted, but the Zrak forces were already in disarray. The dragons had already engaged their most powerful weapon, fire. Explosive blasts of heat and force erupted from their mouths, disintegrating entire sections of the Jirac fleet. Ships that had once seemed invincible now crumbled under the assault. "This is impossible," Orcs muttered, his eyes wide. The Jirac had destroyed dozens of human colonies, conquered countless worlds, and faced species far more advanced than humanity. But none of them had ever had the power of the dragons. He could feel a sense of dread building in his chest. These creatures were not just a threat to Desolace, they were a threat to the Jirac's entire empire. On the surface, Anna watched as the battle raged above. The dragons had become the protectors of Desolace, but the war was far from over. While the dragons tore through the Jirac fleet, the remaining human soldiers had begun organizing their own resistance. They weren't the warriors the Jirac were, but with the dragons now on their side, they stood a chance. "Gather the survivors," Anna shouted to her officers. "We need to get them to safety." She turned to watch as another dragon, its wings glowing with a golden light, soared low over the colony. The dragon's eyes locked onto hers for a brief moment, and she felt an overwhelming sense of power radiating from it. It was as if the dragon had acknowledged her presence, recognizing her as an ally. "Thank you," Anna whispered to the dragon, not sure if it could even understand her. But the dragon's gaze softened, and it gave a mighty roar before turning to engage more of the Jirac fleet. Above, the Jirac ships were falling apart. The dragons moved with a grace that belied their size, each strike from their claws sending shockwaves through the sky. One by one, the Jirac vessels exploded into fiery chunks, raining down on the planet below. The Jirac had underestimated the power of the ancient creatures, and now they were paying the price. Orcs could see it now. His fleet was falling apart. Desolace wasn't just a human colony. It was a battleground for something much larger, something far more ancient. The Jirac had awakened the guardians of the stars, and now the galaxy would never be the same. But as the dragons wreaked havoc on the Jirac fleet, Anna knew that the battle wasn't over yet. The dragons had proven they could defend Desolace, but the war was far from won. There were still countless Jirac forces across the galaxy, and this battle had only just begun. As the smoke and flames from the destroyed Jirac ships began to clear, Anna stood tall, looking up at the dragons. She didn't know what had awakened them, or how they had come to be on Desolace. But one thing was certain. The Jirac had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened the dragons. And now, the dragons were awake to fight. The battle above Desolace was far from over. As the dragons soared through the sky, their flames scorching the Jirac fleet, a strange sense of hope began to spread among the humans below. They had witnessed the impossible. The dragons had come from beneath their feet, and now they were fighting side by side with humanity. Lieutenant Anna Rhodes stood in the command center, watching the battle unfold on the large holographic screens. The dragons were relentless, tearing through the Jirac ships with an unstoppable fury. But despite the victory in the skies, Anna knew the Jirac weren't going to give up so easily. They had more ships, more weapons, and a vast empire to back them up. But now the humans had something far more valuable: the dragons. "Lieutenant," an officer called from behind her, "the survivors are ready to evacuate, but we can't just run and hide. We need a plan." Anna turned to face him. "We fight back," she said firmly, her eyes determined. "The dragons have given us a chance. We can't waste it." As the dragons continued to ravage the Jirac fleet above, Anna ordered her forces to begin organizing a resistance. They didn't have the advanced technology the Jirac had, but they were resourceful. They had weapons, they had strategy, and they had the dragons. That was enough. Meanwhile, in the heart of the battle, the dragons were pushing the Jirac back. Their massive bodies moved through the sky like living mountains, each dragon a force of nature. The Jirac were doing their best to fight back, sending wave after wave of energy blasts at the creatures, but the dragons seemed invulnerable. The flames they unleashed melted through the toughest Jirac armor like butter. With every blast of fire, a Jirac ship crumbled into dust. In the chaos of battle, Anna and her officers gathered a small team of volunteers, the best soldiers and scientists from Desolace. They had to find out more about the dragons, why they had awakened and whether they could help the humans on a larger scale. If the dragons were going to fight for humanity, they needed to understand them better. Anna, along with her team, made their way to the vault. It was a dangerous journey, as the area was still under fire from Zrak gunships. But they had no choice. The vault was the key to everything. The dragons had emerged from it, and they needed to find out what secrets it held. Inside the vault, the air was cool, and the walls were lined with ancient markings, symbols that had been long forgotten by the humans. The light inside flickered, and the floor was covered in dust. But there was something else. A deep, quiet hum, like a heartbeat. The team carefully approached the massive stone doors that led deeper into the vault. They had no idea what they would find, but they had to know. Anna placed her hand on the door, and to her surprise, it opened. The ancient technology seemed to respond to her touch as if it recognized her. Beyond the door, they found the remains of what appeared to be an ancient civilization. Tall statues of dragons stood along the walls, their eyes glowing with a faint energy. The entire room was filled with the scent of ancient dust and power. But it wasn't just the statues that caught their attention. It was the enormous structure in the center of the room. It was a control center, with consoles that flickered to life as soon as Anna and her team entered. The screens were covered in unknown symbols, but they were clearly connected to the dragons. This was the heart of the dragons' power, the place where they had been sealed away for centuries. Suddenly, a voice spoke, echoing in their minds. It was not a voice they could hear with their ears, but one they felt deep within themselves. The voice was ancient, full of wisdom and power. "Why have you awakened us?" Anna and her team stood frozen. The voice was so powerful, so ancient, that it felt as though it came from the very core of the planet itself. We didn't mean to," Anna said, her voice barely a whisper. "We didn't know you were here. The Zrak attacked us, and you came to protect us." The voice was silent for a moment, as if considering her words. Then, it spoke again. "You have awakened the Guardians. The time has come. The Zrak must fall." Anna didn't fully understand what the voice meant, but she knew one thing. The dragons were not just powerful creatures. They were something more, something ancient and tied to the fate of the galaxy itself. They had been sent to protect, to fight, to ensure that the Zrak would never succeed in their plans of domination. The team continued to explore the vault, uncovering more clues about the dragons and their origins. They learned that the dragons had once been the protectors of the galaxy, powerful beings who had kept the balance of power in check. But for reasons unknown, they had been sealed away, hidden from the universe for centuries. The Zrak, it seemed, had unwittingly broken the seal that had kept the dragons dormant. Outside the vault, the battle raged on. The Zrak, realizing they were losing, began to regroup, preparing for one final assault. Their fleet had been decimated, but they still had the power to destroy the planet if they so wished. Anna and her team rushed back to the surface where the dragons were still fighting. As they emerged from the vault, the sight of the dragons battling the Zrak was even more awe-inspiring up close. The dragons were not just creatures of fire and fury. They were beings of incredible intelligence and strength, working in perfect harmony to defeat their enemies. "Get the people to safety," Anna ordered. "The Zrak won't give up easily. We need to be ready for anything." The humans, now united with the dragons, prepared for the final showdown. They had made an unexpected ally in the dragons, but they knew the Zrak were not the type to surrender. The war was far from over. The sun was beginning to rise over Desolace. Smoke still rose from the ruins of the colony, and the ground trembled now and then as dragon wings flapped overhead. The sky was no longer filled with enemy ships. Instead, dragons circled high above, like living sentinels watching and guarding. Lieutenant Anna Rhodes stood on a broken building's edge looking up. She had never imagined something like this could happen. A few days ago, her people were under attack and nearly wiped out. Now, dragons, real dragons, had become their protectors. But Anna knew this was only the beginning. The Zhrak had pulled back for now. Their remaining ships had left Decilus's orbit, disappearing into deep space. It was not retreat out of fear, but strategy. The Zhrak never gave up. They would return, this time with greater numbers and deadlier weapons. Anna turned as Commander Darren, her second-in-command, approached her. He had a bandage on his arm, and dust covered his uniform, but his eyes were sharp. "They're regrouping," he said. "The dragons have been watching space. One of them, the golden one, sensed something. A fleet is coming, much bigger than before." Anna nodded. "Then we need to be ready." Meanwhile, far above Desolase, the Zhrak Supreme Commander Orcs stood in the control room of a massive warship hidden behind a nearby moon. His face was tight with anger. The defeat at Desolus was not just a failure, it was an insult. Dragons, ancient beings they thought extinct, had destroyed half his fleet. He could not allow that to happen again. "We launch in 12 hours, Orcs ordered. "I want the full fleet, no holding back. Desolus must burn, and those creatures must die with it." "But Supreme Commander," said one of his generals, "our sensors show the dragons are spreading across the system. If we attack now, we risk more than just losing ships. We risk waking them all." Orcs clenched his fists. "Then let them come. We'll show them the power of the Zhrak Empire." Back on Desolus, Anna and her team were deep in planning. The dragons had gathered near the vault again. There were 8 of them now, each one a different color, each one carrying a unique aura of power. The largest among them, the golden dragon, spoke through thoughts, his voice deep and steady in Anna's mind. "We were guardians of the stars long ago," the golden dragon said. "We kept balance in the galaxy, but we were betrayed by a race that feared our power. So we slept. Now you have awakened us, and we have chosen to fight beside you." Anna stepped forward, trying to understand. "But why help us? We're weak compared to you. The Zhrak are much stronger." The dragon turned his glowing eyes toward her. "Strength is not only in size. You defended your people with courage. That is why we fight. Together we can do what alone we cannot." Another dragon, smaller but faster, spoke next. "The Zhrak will return soon. We feel it in the stars. We must not wait. We must take the battle to them." Anna thought for a moment. "You're saying we go to space? Attack them before they come back?" "Yes," said the golden dragon. "We strike their fleet, show them the fury of both man and dragon." It was a bold plan, dangerous, but Anna knew it was their best chance. Waiting would only give the Zhrak time to prepare. If they could hit the enemy first and hard, maybe they could stop another colony from being destroyed. 12 hours later, the skies above Desolus were filled again, but this time, not with fear. Human ships, repaired and upgraded, flew in formation with the dragons. The scene was both beautiful and terrifying. The humans had used their knowledge to build armor and weapons for the dragons, made from rare metals found in Desolus's mountains. The dragons now wore light, glowing armor that shimmered as they flew, making them even more powerful. Inside her command ship, Anna looked at the fleet. "All units, this is Lieutenant Rhodes," she said over the radio. "Today we do not run. Today we show the Zhrak that humanity will not bow, and we do not stand alone." The fleet roared in response. The dragons led the way, flying out of the atmosphere and into space, followed by dozens of human ships. The stars ahead seemed calm, but they all knew the battle would begin soon. Near the edge of the system, the Zhrak fleet waited in silence. Thousands of ships, each one deadly and cold, hovered in darkness ready to strike. Then the silence ended. The dragons broke through first, fire erupting from their mouths as they crashed into the Zhrak fleet like comets. Behind them, human ships opened fire, their weapons blazing across the stars. Explosions filled the sky. The Zhrak fought back. They were ready this time. Their weapons were stronger, and their numbers far greater. The battle quickly turned chaotic, with ships crashing, dragons roaring, and blasts of energy lighting up the darkness. But this time, the humans were not alone. A red dragon tore through 3 enemy ships with a single swipe of its tail. A green one created a shockwave that disabled half a squadron. The golden dragon landed on the largest Drac warship, his claws sinking deep into the metal hull as he let out a roar that could be heard across space. Inside her ship, Anna guided her forces carefully. "Focus fire on their command vessels," she ordered. "Stay close to the dragons, use their cover." Her voice was calm but strong. She had trained for this. She had lived through the worst already. Now she was fighting not just for Desolace, but for every human colony that might face the same fate. As the battle reached its peak, the Drac realized their mistake. The dragons were more powerful than before, and the humans more determined. They had become something new, something unstoppable. In the end, the Drac lost control. Their main warship was destroyed by the Golden Dragon, and their fleet scattered. Some ships exploded, others fled into deep space. The sky slowly cleared. The stars once filled with fire and death now sparkled in peace. The silence after the battle felt strange. Desolace had been through so much. The Drac attack, the awakening of the dragons, the furious fight in space. Now, the stars above the planet were peaceful again, no longer filled with explosions or fire. The dragons had done what no one thought possible. They had driven the Drac back, destroyed their fleet, and freed Desolace from the threat that had loomed over them. But as the dragons returned to their resting places, a new concern began to grow. Lieutenant Anna Rhodes stood in the command center of the newly rebuilt colony, staring out at the stars. The battle was over for now, but it was clear that this peace wouldn't last. The Drac were powerful and they were far from finished. Their retreat was just a delay, and it wouldn't be long before they came back with even greater force. "We can't rest yet," Anna said, her voice steady. "The Drac will regroup. They'll bring more ships, more weapons. We need to prepare for the next attack." Commander Darren, standing beside her, nodded. "We've learned a lot from this battle. We've seen the Drac's weaknesses. The dragons are strong, but they won't always be enough if we don't strengthen our defenses." Anna turned to face him. "And we need to learn everything we can about the dragons. If we're going to survive the next battle, we have to understand them better. We don't know what's coming next, but we can't afford to be unprepared." The dragons had been an incredible surprise, but Anna knew they couldn't rely on luck forever. They needed to build on what they had learned. High above the planet, the Drac Supreme Commander Orcs was seething. He had retreated, but the loss stung. The humans had fought back harder than expected, and the dragons had proved to be an unexpected force. His fleet had been crushed, and it was clear that the dragons were a much bigger threat than he had imagined. But Orcs was not one to give up easily. "Prepare the next phase of the plan," Orcs ordered, his voice cold. "We will not make the same mistake twice. We have underestimated the dragons, but we won't do that again." His officers scrambled to follow his orders, but even as they did, Orcs could feel the weight of their failure. The dragons were not just powerful creatures. They were protectors of something far greater, a force that had been forgotten by time. The Drac had awakened something ancient and dangerous, and they would pay the price. On the surface, the humans were not waiting idly by. They had learned much from the first battle, but there was still so much to understand. The dragons had helped them, but they didn't know why the dragons had chosen to protect them, or what the future held. The humans began working closely with the dragons, studying the ancient vault beneath the planet and learning more about their mysterious new allies. Anna was at the vault again, standing in front of the massive stone doors that had once been sealed for centuries. She had come here often in the last few days, hoping to find something that could give them an edge in the coming war. But so far, the vault had only provided more questions. The golden dragon appeared beside her, his wings folded gently at his sides. His presence was calming yet powerful. "The Drac will come again," the dragon said, his voice deep and wise. "But they do not understand the power they have awakened. We have long been protectors of this galaxy, but we have been lost for many ages. You have awoken us, and we will not turn away from your fight." Anna looked up at the dragon, her heart pounding with the weight of his words. "But how can we stop them? We're not as strong as the Jrok. We don't have the resources they do. Strength is not only in numbers, the dragon replied. It is in unity. The Jrok are many, but they are divided. They fight for power, for conquest. You, humans, fight for something greater. You fight for your survival, for your future. Anna thought about the words for a moment. The dragons were right. The Jrok fought for control, but the humans fought for something deeper, for their families, their homes, and the future of their species. That was what made them strong. We'll fight together, Anna said, her voice firm. We'll use everything we have, our knowledge, our strength, and your power. Together, we'll stop the Jrok. The golden dragon nodded, his glowing eyes reflecting her determination. Then we shall fight together. The next few days were filled with preparation. The humans worked tirelessly to repair their ships, build stronger defenses, and learn more about the dragon's powers. They studied the ancient texts found in the vault, uncovering secrets that had been hidden for centuries. They discovered more about the dragon's abilities, how they had once guarded the galaxy from ancient threats. It was clear now that the Jrok were not the only threat in the stars. The dragons had fought many battles before, and they had defeated enemies even more dangerous than the Jrok. But the Jrok were the first to return in ages, and they were determined to crush humanity once and for all. Anna stood in the command center once more, watching the stars as the final preparations were made. The dragons were ready, and the humans were as ready as they could be. The battle ahead would be the final test. They would either succeed, or they would be lost forever. Ready for the final battle? Darren asked, his voice calm but filled with resolve. Anna turned to him and smiled slightly. We've come this far. We fight for our future, for the people of Desolace, and for every human who dreams of the stars. We will not back down. The fleet of human ships, now reinforced and ready for battle, flew in formation with the dragons. They made their way toward the Jrok fleet, which had begun to gather once again. The Jrok were not going to make the same mistake twice. This time, they had a new strategy. They would overwhelm the dragons with sheer force. But the humans and dragons were ready. They had learned from the last battle, and they had a new plan. As the two fleets met in space, the battle began. The Jrok launched everything they had at the humans, their ships swarming like a deadly storm. But the dragons were not intimidated. They fought with a fury that matched the Jrok's own, tearing through the enemy ships with powerful claws and fiery breath. The humans fought fiercely alongside the dragons, using everything they had learned in the past few days to strike back at the Jrok. The Jrok had underestimated the humans before, and now they paid the price. Together, the humans and dragons were an unstoppable force. The battle was fierce, and both sides took heavy losses. But in the end, the Jrok began to fall back, their ships breaking apart under the onslaught. Supreme Commander Orcs watched from his command ship as his fleet was torn apart by the combined might of the humans and dragons. This is not over, Orcs muttered, but his voice was filled with fear. The Jrok had been defeated once again. For now, the galaxy was safe. As the last Jrok ships retreated into the darkness of space, Anna looked up at the dragons. The battle had been hard, but they had won. They had fought together, and it had made all the difference. We did it, Anna whispered, her voice filled with relief. No, said the golden dragon, his voice echoing in her mind. You did it. Together we are stronger than anything the universe can throw at us. Anna smiled. She knew this was only the beginning, but for the first time, she felt truly hopeful. The future of humanity was uncertain, but with the dragons at their side, anything was possible. The aftermath of the battle was quiet. The skies over Desolace, once filled with fire and chaos, were now peaceful again. The Jrok had retreated, and the dragons, their wings glowing softly, hovered above the colony, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. The humans had won for now, but Anna knew that this peace would not last forever. The Jrok were relentless. They would return, but this time the humans would be ready. Anna stood on the observation deck of the command center, gazing out at the stars. The darkness of space was dotted with distant stars, but it no longer felt as cold and lonely as it once had. The dragons had shown the humans that they were not alone. They had awakened something ancient and powerful, and now humanity had an ally unlike anything they could have imagined. "We've won the battle," Commander Darren said, his voice calm but filled with relief. "But the war is far from over. The Drak will return and they'll bring more forces next time." Anna nodded, her eyes still fixed on the sky. "We've proven something to ourselves. We can fight. We can win. But we have to be smarter. The dragons can help, but we need to be prepared. We need to build on what we've learned," Darren agreed. "We can't afford to be caught off guard again. The dragons have the power, but we have to learn how to use it to our advantage. We need to train, develop new tactics, and fortify our defenses." Anna turned to face him. "We've been fighting for our survival from the start. Now it's time to fight for our future." High above Desolace, the golden dragon hovered near the command center, his eyes glowing as he looked down at the humans below. He had been with them through the battles, and he had come to understand their resilience. He could feel their determination, their hope, and he knew that they would not give up easily. "Your people are strong," the golden dragon spoke into Anna's mind. "You have faced the Drak and survived. But there is much more to learn. We have seen the darkness in the stars, and we know that the Drak are not the only threat you will face." Anna looked up at the dragon. "What do you mean?" "There are forces in the galaxy older than the Drak, forces that seek to destroy all life. You have awakened us, but there are many more threats out there, threats you have yet to face. We can guide you, but you must be prepared." Anna's heart raced. "More enemies?" "Yes," the golden dragon replied. "The galaxy is vast, and it is filled with dangers. But we are the guardians. We have fought and protected this galaxy for eons. Now we fight together." Anna took a deep breath. The weight of the dragon's words was heavy, but she understood. The fight against the Drak was only the beginning. There were other forces out there, forces that would test humanity's will to survive. "We'll be ready," Anna said, her voice filled with determination. "We'll fight, and we'll learn. Together." Back on the surface, the humans began the long task of rebuilding. Desolace had been devastated during the battles, but the survivors were strong. They worked together to repair their cities, strengthen their defenses, and prepare for whatever came next. Anna oversaw the reconstruction, making sure that the people of Desolace knew they were not alone. The dragons helped where they could, offering guidance and protection, but the humans knew that they had to stand on their own as well. Anna was meeting with her council when a message arrived. It was from an unknown source, encrypted and heavily guarded. The message was brief, but its contents were clear. The Drak are regrouping. They are preparing for a final strike. This time they will not retreat. They will destroy you. Prepare yourselves. The council room fell silent. Anna's heart raced as she processed the message. The Drak were coming again, and this time they were determined to finish what they had started. But this time they would face something different, something stronger. "We knew they would come back," Anna said, breaking the silence. "We need to move quickly. Get all our defenses online. We don't have time to waste." The days that followed were filled with tension. The humans worked around the clock to prepare for the final battle. The dragons flew above, their fiery breath lighting up the sky as they trained with the humans, teaching them how to harness the power they had discovered. The humans were quick learners, adapting to new tactics, working with the dragons to form a unified front. The Drak had made a mistake in underestimating humanity. This time the humans were ready. They had the knowledge, the strength, and the dragons on their side. On the eve of the battle, Anna stood at the edge of the colony, looking up at the stars once more. The dragons were with them, their wings unfurled and ready for the fight ahead. They had fought together before, but now they were preparing for the final battle. "We will not fail," the golden dragon said, his voice echoing in Anna's mind. "Together we are strong. Together we will protect your future." Anna smiled. Together. The final battle was like no other. The Jrak fleet arrived in full force, their ships darkening the sky. This time they were prepared for the dragons. Their weapons were stronger, their ships larger, but they had not accounted for the human spirit nor the power of the dragons. As the battle raged in space, Anna and her team directed the human forces, coordinating with the dragons to strike back. The dragons moved with precision, their fiery breath incinerating the Jrak ships one by one. The humans fought alongside them, their ships dodging blasts and returning fire with newfound skill. The Jrak, once confident in their power, began to falter. Their fleet was losing ground. The humans had proven that they could stand against the Jrak, and with the dragons by their side they could overcome anything. In the end, the Jrak fleet was destroyed. The remaining ships scattered, retreating once again into the vastness of space. The humans had won, but this time they had done it not with weapons alone but with the strength of their unity and the power of their new allies. As the battle ended, the humans and dragons stood together, looking at the stars once more. The galaxy was still vast, still filled with unknown dangers, but for the first time humanity felt a sense of hope. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. And now, with the dragons at their side, they knew they could face whatever came next. The future was theirs to shape.